Okay, so Shane, well, the tribunal hearing was held in Perth under the Code of Conduct Commissioner. Shane was found guilty and was fined $5,000. That's the outcome of the case. It's probably worth noting that the maximum fine that could have been allocated was $5,750, so he received nearly the maximum fine.
Maybe, Greg, I don't know if there are questions about the conclusion of yesterday's ODI or whether you want to get a step
Perhaps we got Mike to talk about what's going to happen about last night's ODI.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so last night's ODI, obviously we were very disappointed we couldn't play out the game and have a result for the fans. We're very conscious of the fact there were 22,000 fans in the ground who paid good money to see a game, and there were probably 1 million people watching on television last night on Channel 9's broadcast. Obviously there was some unusual climatic conditions around. It was pretty unusual circumstances. We're working with the ICC, whose match officials governed the match, to understand exactly what occurred and what can be done in the future to prevent such an outcome. Because we happen to have a game coming up in Sydney, the T20 International out at Sydney Olympic Park. That match is played at a very big ground. We have the ability to make an offer to the fans who were at last night's match. We were able to provide them a 2-for-1 offer. So if they're prepared to buy a ticket for that game, we'll provide them another ticket for free in recognition of the events of last night. Even though that is pretty much standard for cricket, these things happen in cricket. But because of the circumstances, we're able to make that offer, and we hope that that goes some way to showing fans we really care about their support of the match last night.
Probably open it to the floor. Greg, first question.
Mike, is it fair to say that Warne's ability to promote the BBL from last year to this year has waned, or his reputation has waned, and if he was to play or to have a role with the Stars next season, is that part of CA discussion as well? Do you have a view on whether Shane's star is starting to fall?
Well, I think clearly Shane didn't perform on the field as well as he would like to this year, and so in that regard he'll make his own call on whether playing next year is a good idea. But I think on the balance, Shane's been fantastic for the Big Bash League, and I think if he wants to choose to have a role with the Melbourne Stars next year, or anyone else, we'll welcome that discussion. I think he's a valuable bloke to have on the field and around the game. And I don't think, despite the nature of the last few incidents, that Shane's star has waned in that respect.
Warner's come out and basically said that he's not going to be playing Big Bash next year. If that's the case, was it taken into account that he got a fine rather than a match penalty?
No, impossible for me to know that. I wasn't at the hearing and it wasn't part of the discussions, but I'd be very surprised. I think the Code of Conduct Commissioner looks at the circumstances of the incident and looks at setting precedent for the future rather than worrying about whether Shane's playing next year or not.
If he took a stand and said, look, I'm not going to pay it, what would happen then?
I think Cricket Australia has ways and means of dealing with that, so I don't think that'll be a problem.
Any more questions from the floor? Mark?
Is it pretty cut and dried, that case, black and white, just bang?
Absolutely. The teams were notified before the season started. This rule was introduced for a very specific purpose, and the very incident that occurred was that which we were trying to prevent happening. So it was absolutely open and closed as far as we were concerned.
And do you have to have your ticket from the SCG to get to the home bush?
I think most of the people who bought last night pre-purchased, so we have their information through Ticketek, so long as they've given authority to market to those people. Anybody who has a ticket stub who bought on the night can also have the same conversation with Ticketek.
Back on the Warne issue, just the fact that he snubbed the hearing, how did that make the Cricket Australia feel?
Yeah, I wouldn't call that a snub. Certainly we didn't take any offence. Shane's over here, the case was heard in Perth. On the night he was charged, we had a Code of Conduct Commissioner ready to go to hear the case on the night, but it wasn't appropriate to conduct the hearing that night. So we just carried on as normal. It's not unusual for people not to appear if they don't have much of a defence in the circumstances.
Mike, given the how last night finished, did Cricket Australia as the host association have any grounds to step in and say, hang on, why are you calling this game off when there's probably not a great...
certainly the match is run under the ICC's match conditions by ICC match officials, and they need to make the decisions that they make based on their best judgment. As you would have seen if you watched the broadcast, the Australian captain was certainly putting his point of view, and I think that's the same view that we would have had. I think the key thing is that we see cricket matches needing to be played if they can be played, and while the circumstances last night are not entirely clear to us just yet, you would like to think that we're playing cricket when we can, and that's our view.
The other question I've got is in regard to the DRS. Have you got any comment on perhaps a change to how that's used? It seems to be fairly farcical after the events of
I'm
yesterday.
probably like 20 million other people who watch the game around the country and have an opinion, but doesn't really count. I think a lot of work has to be put into any changes to the system because it is a complicated system. In the vast majority of cases, it works really well. But I think last night we saw a couple of mistakes, well, probably 3 mistakes made during the match. But that happens, and there's swings and roundabouts in the game.